Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Moyo, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how I made my dress. Both the cutting and the sewing tutorial is what you get in this video, so please make sure to watch this video to the end. Also, if this video ends up being helpful, please make sure to give it a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, I would love to see your looks when you are done, so please make sure to tag me on Instagram or just send them to me. For this project, I'm going to be using 3 yards of material, and the material that I'm going to be using is cotton. You can get this at the market for about 1,200 naira. That's how much I got a yard of it, and I'm using 3 yards. I am a size 8, and if you measure from the first selvage hem to the other selvage hem, it is 60 inches. So if you're a size 8, you can definitely use this. If you're a size 10, you can use this. But if you're bigger, if you're like size 12 up, you need more yards, and if your material is only 45 inches, then you definitely need more. So please confirm the length and width of your material before you start this project. So I folded my selvage hem into 2, and the next thing I'm going to be doing is to cut out the first part of my dress. That is my shoulder to knee minus about 4 inches. So I'm just giving you guys an idea. You can make yours shorter or longer or something. So I'm just going to measure from this top to about 37.5 for allowance and all of that. So I'm going to be cutting 37.5 out first. Like I said, guys, I folded my selvage hem into 2. Then I went ahead to give it a good press, and I also folded it into 2 again. That makes it into 4, and that is what you can see here. Next thing I'm going to do is to draw a straight line, and this is where I'm going to be taking all my lines from. I'm going to take my shoulder measurement, divide by 2. Mine is 7.5, and I'm going to mark it on top of my line. I'm also going to move down a little bit and mark the same 7.5. Then I'm going to come over to the top of my line here, and I'm going to take my shoulder slope because my shoulder is not straight. I'm going to take 1 inch for that. Then I will mark 3 inches from the center of my fold, like you guys can see. Then I'm going to use my ruler to connect this point that I've just marked. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to come over to the point where I marked, like you guys can see, my shoulder slope. I'm going to take my back measurements plus ½ inch, which is 8 inches for my armhole. That is how I get my armhole. Then I will use my ruler to connect the points that I already made. Like you can see, once I'm done with this, I'm just going to draw my curve, my armhole curve. We are just going to move into taking the measurement of our body. Now my bust is 34 inches. If I divide that by 4, I'm going to get 8.5. So I'm going to mark 8.5 on my armhole line, like you guys can see. Then I'm going to add 2.5 for the seam allowance. I'm going to come over to the top of my dress, and I'm going to measure from the top to where I want this part to end. Like I said earlier, I want it to end 4 inches above my knee line, and my shoulder to knee is 40. I want 36 at the end of the day, so I'm going to be measuring 37 here. That's ½ inch allowance up and ½ inch allowance down. So once I'm done with this, I'm just going to draw a straight line, and I'm going to cut this out. So I went ahead to just slant this open, and you guys, when you are doing this, you want to ensure that you have enough allowance at your hip area. So to be sure that you have enough allowance at your hip area, you want to measure your shoulder to hip line. Mine is about 25 inches. Then you are going to take your actual hip measurement. Mine is 39, so just check that, and then you add about 4 inches. If you want it to be wider, then you add extra. So mine was just enough, so I just continued with what I'm doing. Like you can see, guys, I slanted this out so it's not straight. I'm also going to come over to the hemline of my dress, and I'm going to slant it up like this. In case you're wondering how many inches to go up by, you can use about 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to cut it out. I'm also going to come over to the top of my dress, and I'm just going to cut out the marking that I already made before. For the width of my neckline, I'm using 3.5, so I'm just going to mark that right there. Then for the depth of my neckline, I'm going to be using 6.5, so I'm also going to mark that, like you guys can see. I'm going to come over to the 6.5 mark, and I'm going to take 3.5 inches, the one that I took up. Then I'm just going to square it up like this. Once I'm done, I'm going to make the shape that I want. I want a V neck, but I don't want a V that is just sharp. I want a rounded V, so that is what I went ahead to cut. Once I'm done with this, I'm just going to cut it out, and then I have my dress. Again, I'm going to match my 2 selvage hemlines. Then I'm going to measure 26 inches. This is to complete my entire gown. My entire length is 60 inches, so I'm just cutting 26 inches out, and I'm going to cut 2 of this. So that means that in total I'm going to have 120 inches, and this is what I'm going to pleat on the top that we just cut out. You guys should note that the 26 inches that I cut it allowance. What I actually need is 24 inches. Next, we are going to move on to cutting the ruffle on the neck of my dress, and this is going to be 6 inches. I match the 2 selvage hem again, and then I'm just going to cut it out like that. So in total I have 60 inches for the ruffle on my dress, and I'm going to be gathering this later on. Again, I'm going to bring back the top of my dress. Okay, remember that we folded both the front and back together initially, so I'm going to separate one part from the other, like you can see. Then on the other part that is on fold, I'm going to use that as my front. So what I want to do is just to take in a little bit, about 0.5 on my armhole, like you can see. And once I'm done with that, I'm just going to cut it out. So remember that this thing that I'm doing is just for one part. I'm not cutting out on both sides of the material. And I'm going to also label this as my front. Guys, it's time to cut this sleeve, and for my sleeve I'm not cutting a proper sleeve. I'm cutting something like just a cover for the sleeve. So I folded my material into 2, like you can see. This was all I had left, and I really wanted to manage it, so I folded it into 2 initially. They can see how I folded it. To be very honest, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to practice things out. So just fold it out the way you can see that I'm folding it. Then once I'm done with this, I'm going to cut. So it's time to cut my sleeve, and I took this material that is about 10 inches. I'm not sure, it should be about that. And I folded into 2. Then I'm also going to fold into 2 again. This is going to be for how wide my sleeve is. Then once I'm done with this, I'm just going to fold it into 2 again, like you can see. Then I'm going to grab my tape rule, and I'm going to measure from the top of my shoulder, like you can see. I'm going to try to get the length of my armhole. What I got was about 9 inches, and I'm going to measure like 10 inches on my sleeve like that. Then once I'm done with this, I'm just going to place it very close to my armhole, like you can see. Then I'm just going to try to trim it off, so that by the time I'm done sewing, it just fits in perfectly. I'm just going to go ahead and trim off the excesses, and I'm going to make sure that my 2 sleeves are on fold. So I'm just trimming the parts that is not supposed to be on fold. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to match it with my armhole, and I'm going to trim off the excess that I need to trim. So I'm using this small piece of material, and I'm going to fold it into 2, then into 2 again. Then I'm going to place my neckline on it. Once I'm done with this, I'm just going to cut it out, and this is going to serve as my facing. We're moving to sewing, and I'm going to place my main fabric and place my facing on it, like you guys can see. And I'm going to attach the facing to the main fabric using pins. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to go ahead to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew for my 2 pieces. So the same process I'm doing for my front is the same thing I'll do for the back as well. I'm done sewing my neckline. This is what it looks like. Now, to make it easy for me to turn, I'm going to go ahead and notch around my neckline like you guys can see. So just notch on every part that you can notch. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to open up my facing, then I'm going to stitch my notches towards the facing like you guys can see. So on that line is where I'm going to be stitching. So once I'm done stitching on this line, turning my facing is going to be very easy. This process that I just did is called an under stitch, and this is what it looks like. So you guys, it is important to iron your fabric. If you're using this cotton fabric, no matter how hard you iron, it will still be like you did not iron. So if you iron, it's just going to make your work look neater and smoother. You can see what I have here. I like it. Also, I did this step for the back as well. So what I have for my front is also what I have for my back. But remember, we already differentiated the front from the back. Now remember this long piece that is 60 inches long and 6 inches wide. So I went ahead to fold in the other side so that I can easily make my ruffles. Once I'm done with this, I'm just going to notch the middle point like you can see, just to guide me when I am making my ruffles, and I'm going to notch that. Then I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew with the loose stitch on my machine. You can use 4 or 5 on your industrial machine. I don't know if it's because of the material, but as I was sewing, the gathers were already forming, which is good for me. So I'm just going to use my hand to gather the rest. Now to gather the rest, I'm going to be pulling one of those ropes. Then I'm just going to pull the fabric towards the center. So my goal is to pull from this side to the center. Remember that we already made a notch when we were cutting our fabric. We already made a notch on our rope. So I'm just going to pull from this side to the center and also from the other side to the center as well. So I'm done with my ruffle and I'm just going to grab the front of my dress. And I'm going to be using my pencil and my tape rule to measure 1.5 from my neckline. So I'm just going to measure that around and I'm going to get the shape of my neck, but I'm going to put it down like you guys can see. Once I'm done with taking all the marks that I want to take, I'm simply going to connect the lines and form the shape that I want. The next thing to do is to attach my ruffle to my neckline where I have just marked. So my V part is obviously the middle part of my front. So I'm just going to match the notch that I made earlier. Do you remember when we made that notch? So I'm just going to match it with the middle part of my V-neck, okay? And I'm going to secure that using a pin. Once I'm done with that, I'm just going to, make sure the ruffles are gathered towards the area that I'm going to be needing it. So that means from my shoulder area to the midpoint, I'm going to make sure that the ruffles there are just enough so I don't have excesses. So I'm just going to adjust that. Then once I'm done adjusting that, I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm just going to sew over the line that I just made. And when you are sewing on top of that line, make sure that you sew slightly before the line, because you don't want the line to be showing when you are done sewing. Once you are done attaching the ruffle to your neckline, make sure you flip it over and then iron it. Ironing is what will make your project to come out looking nice and neat. I am done sewing the front and it's time to attach my front to my back. So I'm just going to grab my back piece. I already turned the back, remember. So I'm going to match the shoulder area together and I'm going to use the facing to kind of cross the front because I want it to look nice and smooth. Just follow my step To attach your back to your front on the shoulder line, open the facing of the back like you can see, then you match the right side of the back with the right side of the front, and then you turn with the facing. But when you are turning this facing, use the back facing to turn the front like you can see. Then you go ahead to the sewing machine, and so once you are done sewing, open it up and you are going to have something like this. So guys, this is nice and smooth. Then I also went ahead to fold in my ruffle at this end before I attached my front to my back. So just do anything that works for you guys. Also at this point, I'm going to grab my sleeve that we already cut, and I'm going to kind of try to match it. If it's fine, then I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm just going to follow the curve and attach my sleeve to my armhole. Now I am done sewing and this is my result. Now to help my sleeve area lay nice and flat, I'm going to open the wrong side of my fabric like you can see, and I'm just going to try to make small cuts on the sewing area, the curved area, so that when I iron, everything is just going to rest. So I'm done attaching my sleeve and I went ahead to give it a good press. You can see how nice it looks. So I'm just going to fold my fabric to the wrong side like so, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew the sides of my dress. I'm just going to sew with about 1/2 inch on both sides of my fabric. So I'm done with the top part of my dress. Now it's meaning the gathers beneath my dress. So now to sew that, I'm just going to grab the two pieces that we cut earlier, which was 60 inches wide and 26 inches long. So on the 26-inch length area, I'm going to join the other fabric. So now in total I have about 120 inches wide, and this 120 inches width is what I'm going to be connecting to the down part of my dress. So the thing you want to do now is to divide these two pieces that you just joined, just match the areas that you joined together, then you notch the center, so that technically you are just dividing this into 4. Does that make sense? And also your main dress, you are also going to fold it into 4 as well. So once you are done with this, you're just going to match the notch areas and the parts that we already sewed. I don't know if you guys can understand what I'm saying, but yes, just try to match the notch on your fabric, on the new fabric, with the notch on your main dress. Once I'm done with this, I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to gather. Now in case you have problems making your gathering, I'm going to help you. The best way to gather your fabric is to gather in sections. So we're gathering 4 times. So I went ahead to sew loose stitches on this side now. Then I'm going to divide the rope at the end. I'm going to divide it into 2. Then I'm going to be pulling just one of those ropes like you can see. So I'm just going to pull towards the center on one side. Once I'm okay with what I have, I'm not going to pull through. I'm also going to move over to the other side. Then I'm going to separate the ropes again, and I'm going to pull only one of the ropes. So what this one does is that you don't get to a point where you cannot pull your rope or something is wrong with your rope because you're pulling from both sides. You have that amount of flexibility that you need. So like I said, pull in sections. We already matched the notches that we made with on 4 sides, right? So we're making our gathers 4 times. So we have done the first one. I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and sew this part, and I'm also going to do 2 more sections offline. Then I'm going to come over and show you how to do the last part again. So like I said, I'm done sewing the 3 parts. Like you can see, I'm just going to go over how to do your gathering again for the last time. So you see this part that we're going to make our gathers on, you're going to go over to your sewing machine and sew with very loose tension. You can use about 4 or 5 on your sewing machine if you're sewing with industrial. Then once you are done, you're going to come here and pull just one rope. You're going to have 2 ropes, right? Just pull one of those ropes from one side, and then you go over to the other side and then pull just one rope. This one also helps you in the sense that your rope doesn't cut because you're pulling it too much. Since you're pulling on both sides, your ropes have this kind of flexibility. Does that make sense? So once you are done pulling the amount of gathering that you're going to need, you're going to head over to the sewing machine, sew, and come back. And guys, that is all for this video. So guys, this is the finished look of our dress. I really hope this tutorial was helpful. If it was, please give it a huge thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. Also tag me on Instagram to see your finished look, or you can send your dresses to me. I would love to see your recreations. Thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video. I will see you all in my next one. Bye guys.